The violence of positivity does not exclude it, exhausts. It does not repress, it suffocates. This is not just a quote, it is a key, a sacred key to understanding the profound weight you feel pressing upon your soul. You wake up, and even before your feet touch the floor, a deep, gnawing exhaustion has already claimed your spirit. Your body, a loyal vessel, rises to meet the day, but your mind, your very essence, feels like it is dragging the chains of 1,000 lifetimes. The day hasn't even begun its celestial dance, and yet everything within you feels heavy. The burden of thought, the tightness in your chest, even the silence itself seems to thrum with an unspoken, overwhelming pressure. You look out at the world, and on the surface, the frequency seems normal. The grand illusion of productivity hums along, but you are not fooled. You feel the dissonance, the silent scream beneath the surface of the mundane. This exhaustion is not a sign of your weakness. It is the cry of your spirit, a divine signal that you are living within a profoundly sick society. And you must know, with every fiber of your being, you are not alone in this feeling. The illness is not just within you. It permeates the very air we breathe, the collective consciousness we inhabit. If this is your frequency, if this message finds you in the quiet corners of your struggle, let your presence be known. Type, "I am not alone," in the comments, so the universe and others on this path can feel your light. Like and subscribe to join this sacred space of awakening. There is a truth that has been intentionally veiled from your perception, a truth that no one has dared to whisper to you in the dead of night. It is this: you are not merely tired. You are not just weary. You are sick. This is not a judgment, but a sacred recognition. It is an acknowledgement of the battle you have been fighting, often unknowingly, against a force far more insidious than any visible enemy. And this sickness, this deep spiritual malady, is not a personal failing. It is not a flaw in your design. It is the natural, inevitable response of a healthy soul to an unhealthy world. We are living in an era, a specific vibrational timeline, where suffering has lost its face. The old tyrants, the ones with loud voices and iron fists, have been replaced. There are no longer prison bars you can see, no shouting bosses whose orders you can overtly defy, no direct, obvious repression to rally against. The chains are no longer forged of cold, hard steel. They are woven from the glittering, seductive threads of possibility and potential. But what has taken the place of this old-world oppression is something infinitely more cruel, more pervasive, because it has burrowed its way into the deepest chambers of your heart. In this new paradigm, there exists an invisible, relentless imperative, the divine mandate of performance. You have been masterfully conditioned to become your own oppressor, your own tireless taskmaster, your own harshest critic. The external order that once dictated your actions has been internalized. It has become a constant, whispering frequency inside your own head, a ghost in your own machine. And that whisper, that seductive yet poisonous voice never ceases. It says, you need to do more. You need to be more. You must produce more. Never stop. Never, ever stop. The great philosopher Byung-Chul Han, a seer of our times, has given this phenomenon a name: the Society of Performance. It is a system so cunning, so diabolically brilliant, that it makes you believe you are freer than ever before. It hands you the illusion of choice, the fantasy of limitless potential, and in doing so, it traps you more completely than any physical prison ever could. You are ensnared not by walls, but by the endless horizon of your own goals. You are held captive by the very idea that every single second of your existence must be made useful, must be optimized, must be productive. Every action you take is now weighed on the scales of results. Every breath you draw must be a step towards some future, better version of yourself. And so, if you dare to stop, if you fail, if you allow yourself the grace of rest, a deep and gnawing guilt begins to consume you. In the logic of this system, to pause is to be worthless. To be still is to be a failure. This is the alchemy of our age, where positivity has been turned into a slow-acting poison, where freedom has been twisted into the most secure and inescapable of handcuffs. The very ability to do everything, the constant chorus of, "Yes, you can," has become a condemnation, a sentence to a life of never, ever being able to truly stop. Ask yourself, does a pang of guilt strike you when you are not actively producing something? Do you feel a surge of anxiety when you are not immediately responding to the endless stream of digital messages, each one a demand disguised as an opportunity? Do you feel a wave of frustration, of self-loathing, when you don't meet the impossibly high goals you've set for yourself, even when no one else is demanding it of you? This is not just stress. This is not mere fatigue. This is burnout. But this is not the kind of burnout that a weekend getaway or a spa day can resolve. This is not a simple depletion of physical energy. What you are experiencing is existential burnout. It is the soul-deep exhaustion that hollows you out from the inside while you are forced to maintain the facade of normalcy, of high-functioning competence, on the outside. And if any of this at all, resonates with the deepest part of you, understand that it is no coincidence. It is not a sign of your personal inadequacy. It is because you are a living, breathing, feeling soul trapped inside the system, and the system's primary function is to make you believe that this state of perpetual, draining motion is normal. But it is not. This is a divine call, not for you to produce more, but for you to awaken. Because, perhaps for the very first time in a long time, someone is telling you the profound truth. You are not weak. You are not failing. You are simply trying to survive in a society that systematically makes sick those who dare to try to be strong all the time. Take a deep breath. We are going to talk about this, and you are not alone. For a great expanse of human history, power was something you could see and hear. It announced itself with shouts and commands. Its architecture was visible, prisons with their high walls, barracks with their rigid drills, factories with their deafening machinery, asylums with their padded cells. The structures of control were external and unapologetic. The philosopher Michel Foucault, a cartographer of power, called this a disciplinary society. The logic was brutally simple. Someone commanded, and you obeyed. There was a "you can't" that was constantly watching you, pruning you, shaping you into a compliant, predictable part of the whole. There was a clear line between the oppressor and the oppressed, between the watcher and the watched. But this world, the world of visible prohibitions and overt control, is disappearing. It is fading like an old photograph, replaced by something far more sophisticated, and as we have seen, far more cruel. What has taken its place is a new landscape of power, one where almost no one prohibits you from anything. No one tells you that you can't. On the contrary, the new mantra, the new gospel that is preached from every screen and billboard, is that you can do anything, that you are free, that you possess unlimited potential. That achieving your wildest dreams is simply a matter of effort, a question of focus, a test of your discipline. And this message, on its surface, seems so wonderfully positive, so incredibly motivating. But it carries a hidden, venomous trap. When everything depends only on you, when you are the sole architect of your success, then any failure is also, and always, your fault. This is the dark, unspoken essence of the performance society, the era we are living in now. The prison has no walls, but it has goals. The punishment is not physical, it is psychological. And the one who demands, the one who judges, the one who punishes, is you. You have been conscripted into service as the entrepreneur of your own self, as Byung-Chul Han so brilliantly states. And what, you might ask, is the problem with that? The problem is that an entrepreneur can never truly stop. They can always improve, they can always grow, they can always do more. This relentless drive for self-optimization puts you in an infinite, unwinnable race against yourself, a race with no finish line, no rest, no truce. Have you noticed this insidious creep in your own life? Have you seen how even the sacred space of leisure has been colonized and turned into another goal to be achieved? Reading is no longer a simple pleasure. It has to be productive reading, a way to acquire knowledge and skills. Meditation is no longer a moment of quiet surrender. It has become a performance technique, another tool to enhance your focus and efficiency. Exercise is no longer a joyful expression of the body's energy. It has become a mandatory task on your to-do list, another metric to track. Even sleep, the ultimate state of surrender, has been turned into a battlefield. You are encouraged to monitor its quality, to calculate the hours, to optimize your nighttime routine, all in the service of performing better tomorrow. In this paradigm, resting is no longer resting. It's preparing to perform. You don't live, you manage yourself. And when you inevitably fail, when you can't cope with the relentless pressure, when you get sick, when you freeze, you blame yourself. You are the one who failed. After all, no one prohibited you from anything, right? You had freedom, you had choice, you just had to make an effort. And that, right there, is where the perversity lies. The new form of oppression is making you believe that you are oppressing yourself willingly. Control has changed its form. It has left the figure of the boss, the sovereign, the external authority, and it has entered your head. You have become the god and the guard of your own prison. The wall is now invisible, but it's there. It is built with the bricks of expectations, the mortar of metrics, the steel of productivity, and the relentless pressure of self-demand. And this invisible wall is even harder to break, because you no longer know where the system ends and where you begin. But if all of this is crushing you from within, it's because there is something deeply, fundamentally wrong with this model, because it is not natural to live in a constant state of war with yourself. And this silent war is leaving marks on your mind, on your body, on your soul. And that's what we will talk about next. Because this exhaustion that consumes you does not come from an external enemy. It comes from within, and it is fed by something that seems harmless but is not: excessive positivity. You have learned to smile while you are falling apart inside. You have been trained to say that everything is fine when, in reality, you are standing on the very brink of collapse. You have mastered the art of maintaining an image of control, of efficiency, of unshakable enthusiasm, even when every cell in your body, every whisper of your soul, is screaming for a pause. And do you know why you do this? Because we live immersed in a new, subtle, and incredibly potent kind of violence. It is a violence that does not hit, does not shout, does not impose. It seduces. It invites. It motivates us. It is the violence of positivity, as Byung-Chul Han warns us. The 21st century is no longer dominated by the diseases of repression, the ailments that came from a world of you can't. We no longer live in times of overt censorship, strict prohibitions, or forcefully imposed limits. Productivity has become the new, unquestionable form of obedience. You think you are in control of your life because you have the freedom to choose, to create, to innovate, to chase your dreams. But what no one told you is that this freedom is a farce, because all available paths lead to the same destination: more work, more demands, more acceleration. And even what was once sacred, what once served as a shelter from the world, has now become an extension of your performance. The body has turned into a machine to be optimized. The mind, a tool for managing goals. Relationships have become networking. Spirituality has turned into coaching. Rest has become a recharge to produce again. Even your free time is analyzed, monetized, and maximized. You have become a company, and the only employee of that company is you. But no one can sustain this for long, and you are feeling it. The overload is not just physical, it is existential. You are present everywhere, except within yourself. You are always functioning, but never truly living. And deep down, you know, the more you try to fit into this ideal of success, the further you feel from your own essence. And here comes the question that few have the courage to ask. What have you lost in this process? What was left behind while you were chasing a better version of yourself every single day? What was silenced? What was set aside? There is a part of you that may not even remember what it is like to exist without having to justify your existence. In the next part, we will talk about this forgotten space, about the silence you avoid, the boredom that scares you, and the deep, quiet contemplation that has become a lost art. This rare and almost extinct skill is what you need to rediscover now. Because you were not born to be a cog. You were born to feel, to be, to simply exist. When was the last time you allowed yourself to simply do nothing? Not to plan, not to respond, not to consume, not to justify yourself. Just to be, to breathe. To feel time pass without the gnawing sensation that you are wasting it. Perhaps you don't even know how to do that anymore. And it's not your fault. You have been trained to always be active, always available, always connected. Any moment of pause is quickly filled by a notification, a new task, a short video, a piece of motivational content, an inner voice whispering, "I need to solve this first." In this world, leisure has become waste, silence has become discomfort, and boredom has become an enemy to be exterminated at all costs. But let me tell you something that no one talks about. Deep boredom is not a flaw. It is a portal. Byung-Chul Han explains that in the past, boredom was the fertile ground for creation, for reflection, and for true presence. It was within the sacred space of boredom that philosophy, art, and spirituality were born. Because boredom, the kind that is not in a hurry, the kind that bothers you and makes you face yourself, opens a space for deep contemplation. And contemplation is what brings you back to your humanity. Today, however, we live immersed in a state of fragmented attention. We jump from stimulus to stimulus like animals on high alert. Multitasking is no longer a skill. It has become a survival instinct. You watch a video while responding to messages, while thinking about tomorrow's meeting, while feeling guilty for not doing more. The present has become unbearable, and this mental hyperactivity has a price. It robs you of your depth, your connection to the world, to people, and most importantly, to yourself. You get used to consuming everything on the surface, including your own emotions. You feel, but you don't dive deep. You reflect, but you don't deepen. You live, but you don't inhabit. That's why you are tired even after sleeping, anxious even in silence, disconnected even when surrounded by people. Because your soul has been trained to run but has unlearned how to stop. And stopping is not weakness. Stopping is a reunion. It is in silence that you hear what the rush hides. It is in the pause that you realize how wounded you are. It is in the emptiness that you rediscover who you are, without all those layers of productivity that have been placed upon you. But this return to being requires courage. The courage to slow down, to face the discomfort of having nothing to do, to endure the emptiness until it becomes fertile. And above all, it requires the courage to say no to the relentless imperative of performance. And that's where we enter one of the most revolutionary points of Han's thought. A concept that may seem strange at first glance, but that perhaps contains the only real way out of this crisis we are living, the not being able to, as a form of freedom. In the next part, we will understand why stopping can be the most powerful act you can commit, and why perhaps the true rebel of our era is the one who has the courage to do nothing. You have been trained to believe that freedom is the ability to do everything, that the more possibilities you have, the freer you will be. That the ideal life is one full of achievements, movement, and autonomous decisions. But what no one explained to you is that this excess of power, of choice, of initiative, is also a prison, and perhaps it is the most disguised and dangerous of all. The logic of our society is simple. If you are not doing something, you are wasting life. Everything must have a purpose, a utility, a result. Even rest needs to justify its existence as energy recovery. Even silence needs to be sold as strategic self-care. Everything needs to make sense. Everything needs to be profitable. Everything needs to generate something. But Byung-Chul Han presents us with a radical idea. True freedom begins when you reclaim the right not to do, not to act, not to want, not to be useful, to simply not be able to. This seems counterintuitive, doesn't it? After all, we spend our whole lives trying to achieve the power to do, the power to travel, the power to produce, the power to achieve. the power to decide. But the power to do has become an imperative. You can, so you must. And what if you don't want to? What if you can't? What if you are simply tired? The answer you hear from society is clear. You have failed. In this model, there is no space for vulnerability. There is no space for no. Everything that does not fit into this logic of action, achievement, and growth is seen as deviation, weakness, laziness. But what if it is precisely in that space of refusal that true strength resides? Saying no is an act of power. Refusing excess, haste, and overload is a gesture of resistance. Not wanting to improve all the time, not accepting every opportunity, not following all advice, not answering every call, saying no to the world in order to say yes to yourself. This not being able is revolutionary. It breaks the logic of infinite productivity. It shatters the myth of being the best. It returns to the human being what was taken from them: the ability to exist without having to constantly prove their worth. And when you allow yourself that no, something changes inside. Anxiety gives way to silence. Guilt yields to presence. The rush transforms into breathing. You no longer need to chase after yourself because you are already here, whole, now. But don't be fooled. This freedom is not comfortable because it requires confrontation. It requires you to look at the void and say, I accept not to be everything. I accept not to do everything. I accept to just be. And this goes against everything you have learned until today. That's why many become ill, trying to free themselves without realizing they are just swapping one set of shackles for another. The true challenge is not to do more. It is to be able to stop, to be able to let go, to be able to say, enough. But when you start to see the no as liberation, something is revealed, a clarity that was covered by noise, a strength that does not come from overcoming, but from surrender, a peace that only appears when you refuse to keep fighting against yourself. And that is where we reach the deepest truth of all this. One that you may have already felt, even without knowing how to name it. The burnout you are experiencing is not just tiredness. It is the symptom of a failed way of life. It is a cry for help from your soul. If you have made it this far, it's because something inside you is screaming. Perhaps silently, perhaps stifled, but it is screaming. Because you realize, even if vaguely, that something is very wrong with the way we are living. And I will tell you plainly, what you feel is not weakness. It is not incapacity. It is not a lack of mental strength. It is a natural response to a system that demands the impossible and labels as failure those who cannot deliver. You are not failing because you are tired. You are exhausted because you have been pushed into a life model that consumes every last drop of your emotional, psychological, and spiritual energy. A model that has turned each individual into a production machine, a showcase of performance, an avatar of success. And in this mad race for an unattainable ideal of achievement, what is lost is the most precious meaning. Byung-Chul Han is clear in saying that burnout is not an anomaly. It is not an exception. It is the most evident symptom of a collective existential crisis. It is not the collapse of a few too sensitive or too disorganized individuals. It is the collapse of an entire social logic based on self-exploitation, the cult of efficiency, and the disdain for silence, leisure, and inner life. You are not alone. This pain you carry, this fatigue that doesn't go away, this feeling of emptiness, even when everything should be fine, is not your fault. It is a cry from your body and soul, asking for a different rhythm, a different perspective, a different way of being in the world. And this way begins with a simple yet powerful choice: to refuse to continue living the way things are. Perhaps you still don't know how to get out of this. Perhaps everything I have said so far has touched you in some deep place, but you don't know what to do with that feeling. That's okay. The first step is not to act. The first step is to recognize, to feel, to allow yourself to look within, without filters, without defenses, without justifications. And if you identified with all of this, if this video spoke to something you didn't even know you needed to hear, I want to ask you one thing. Comment down below. Tell me how you're feeling. Tell me if this resonated with you. Because when we share, We recognize ourselves, and when we recognize ourselves, healing begins. Keep watching the next video. It is important, just as much as this one, because transformation does not happen all at once. It happens in layers, in conversations, in reflections that accumulate until one day you wake up different, more whole, more aware, more free.